friends. It's time for Stories for the Heart. The first story is titled A Man Can't Just Sit Around by Chip McGregor. I suppose most people have dreams, but how many people actually turn their dreams into reality? Larry Walters is among the relatively few who have. His story is true, though you may find it hard to believe. Larry was a truck driver, but his lifelong dream was to fly. When he graduated from high school, he joined the Air Force in hopes of becoming a pilot. Unfortunately, poor eyesight disqualified him. So when he finally left the service, he had to satisfy himself with watching others fly the fighter jets that crisscrossed the skies over his backyard. As he sat there in his lawn chair, he dreamed about the magic of flying. Then one day, Larry Walters got an idea. He went down to the local Army-Navy surplus store and bought a tank of helium and 45 weather balloons. These were not your brightly colored party balloons. These were heavy-duty spheres measuring more than 4 feet across when fully inflated. Back in his yard, Larry used straps to attach the balloons to his lawn chair, the kind you might have in your own backyard. He anchored the chair to the bumper of his Jeep and inflated the balloons with helium. Then he packed some sandwiches and drinks and loaded a BB gun, figuring he could pop off a few of those balloons when it was time to return to Earth. His preparations complete, Larry Walters sat in his chair and cut the anchoring cord. His plan was to lazily float back down to terra firma, but things didn't quite work out that way. Oh my goodness. When Larry cut the cord, he didn't float lazily up. He shot up as if fired from a cannon. Nor did he go up just a couple hundred feet. He climbed and climbed until he finally leveled off at 11,000 feet. Oh my goodness. Crikeys, oh my word, that is just crazy. This is hard to believe. At that height, he could hardly risk deflating any of the balloons, lest he unbalance the load and really experience flying. So he stayed up there sailing around for 14 hours, totally at a loss as how to get down. Oh, I'm so sorry. This is just too funny. Eventually, Larry drifted into the approach corridor for Los Angeles International Airport. A Pan Am pilot radioed the tower about passing a guy in a lawn chair at 11,000 feet with a gun in his lap. I'm sorry, folks. Oh my word, this is my first time reading through this story, and I can't take it. Okay, now there's a conversation I'd have given anything to have heard on the radioing back and forth from the pilot to the tower. Oh my goodness. LAX is right on the ocean, and you may know that at nightfall, the winds on the coast begin to change. So as dusk fell, Larry began drifting out to sea. At that point, the Navy dispatched a helicopter to rescue him. But the rescue team had a hard time getting to him because the draft from their propeller kept pushing his homemade contraption farther and farther away. Oh my goodness, I can't imagine what was going through his mind this whole time. What an adventure. Eventually, they were able to hover over him and drop a rescue line with which they gradually hauled him back to Earth. As soon as Larry hit the ground, he was arrested. Oh no. But as he was being led away in handcuffs, a television reporter called out, "Mr. Walters, why did you do it?" Larry stopped, eyed the man, then replied nonchalantly, "A man can't just sit around, you know." Oh my goodness. Maybe I should pre-read some of these people, right? I would have been prepared for this. But okay, I love that story. This one is called Come On, Get With It by Howard Hendricks. Not long ago, I lost one of my best friends. a woman 86 years old, the most exciting lay teacher I've ever been exposed to. The last time I saw her on planet Earth was at one of those aseptic Christian parties. We were sitting there on eggshells looking pious when she walked in and said, "Well, Hendricks, I haven't seen you for a long time. What are the 5 best books you've read in the past year?" She had a way of changing a group's dynamic. Her philosophy was, let's not bore each other with each other. Let's get into a discussion. And if we can't find anything to discuss, well then let's get into an argument. She was 83 on her last trip to the Holy Land. She went there with a group of NFL football players. One of my most vivid memories of her is seeing her out front yelling back to them, "Come on, man, get with it!" She died in her sleep at her daughter's home in Dallas. Her daughter told me that just before she died, she had written out her goal for the next 10 years. May her tribe increase. Wow. So she was 86 when she passed away, and she had already written out goals for the next 10 years, what she wanted to do. Wow. That's amazing. Good for her. Maybe we could all take a lesson from that. This one is called The Nearest Battle, and it's by Richard C. Halverson, who was a former chaplain of the United States Senate. Want to be a winner? Compete with yourself, not anybody else. Beating your partner at golf doesn't necessarily mean you shot your best game. Outrunning your rival doesn't mean you ran your best race. You can win over another and still not fulfill your potential. It's true in all of life. To be your best, you must compete with yourself. It's life's biggest contest. A loser is a winner, however many his losses, if he conquers himself. A winner is a loser, however many his victories, if he loses the battle with himself. Alexander the Great conquered the world and cursed his own lack of self-control. Victory over others may in fact be the very thing that contributes to the winner's failure to conquer self. Winning makes him proud, arrogant, independent, thoughtless, and even sometimes cruel. To put it another way, it isn't what happens to you that makes the difference, but it's how you handle it. The one who stops maturing spiritually because he thinks he knows more scripture than others, or has had more success in ministry, is still far from being what Christ had planned for him. If you must compare yourself with another, compare yourself with Christ. Let him mold and fashion your life into the full potential, the divine original he intends. Okay, this one is a very short little selection just titled Success, retold by Alice Gray. Mother Teresa attended a gathering with kings and presidents and statesmen from all over the world. They were there in their crowns and jewels and silks, and Mother Teresa wore her sari, held together by a safety pin. One of the noblemen spoke to her of her work with the poorest of the poor in Calcutta, India. He asked her if she didn't become discouraged because she saw so few successes in her ministry. Mother Teresa answered, "No, I do not become discouraged. You see, God has not called me to be a minister of success. He has called me to a ministry of mercy." That's really good. What a good perspective that she had. The Red Umbrella, retold by Tanya Gray. As the drought continued for what seemed like an eternity, a small community of Midwest farmers were in a quandary as to what to do. The rain was important not only in order to keep the crops healthy, but to sustain the townspeople's very way of life. As the problems became more urgent, the local church felt it was time to get involved and planned a prayer meeting in order to ask for rain. In what seemed a vague remembrance of an old Native American ritual, the people began to show. The pastor soon arrived and watched as his congregation continued to file in. He slowly circulated from group to group as he made his way to the front in order to officially begin the meeting. Everyone he encountered was visiting across the aisles, enjoying the chance to socialize with their close friends. As the pastor finally secured his place in the front of his flock, his thoughts were on the importance of quieting the crowd and starting the meeting. Just as he began asking for quiet, he noticed an 11-year-old girl sitting in the front row. She was angelically beaming with excitement, and laying next to her was her bright red umbrella, poised for use. The beauty and the innocence of this sight made the pastor smile to himself as he realized the faith this young girl possessed that the rest of the people in the room seemed to have forgotten. For the rest had come just to pray with him for rain. She had come to see God answer. All it takes is a little motivation, and this is by Zig Ziglar. I love this story the late Dr. Ken McFarland delighted in telling. It seems a gentleman worked on the 4 p.m. to midnight shift, and he always walked home after work. One night the moon was shining so bright, he decided to take a shortcut through the cemetery, which would save him roughly a half-mile walk. There were no incidents involved, so he repeated the process on a regular basis, always following the same path. One night, as he was walking this route through the cemetery, he did not realize that during the day, a grave had been dug in the very center of his path. He stepped right into the grave and immediately started desperately trying to get out. His best efforts failed him, and after a few minutes, he decided to relax and wait until morning when someone would help him out. He sat down in the corner and was half asleep when a drunk stumbled into the grave. His arrival roused the shift workers since the drunk was desperately trying to climb out also, clawing frantically at the sides. Our hero reached out his hand, touched the drunk on the leg, and said, "Friend, you can't get out of here." But he did. Now that's motivation. Wow, what a great little story. I think I would get out of there too. Okay, this is called An Autobiography in 5 Short Paragraphs by Portia Nelson. Paragraph number 1. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Number 2. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in. I can't believe I'm in the same place again, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Paragraph number 3. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are wide open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I immediately get out. Paragraph number 4. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Paragraph number 5. I walk down a different street. What a cool little analogy to that reminds me of the phrase, the definition of idiocy, the definition of idiocy is just, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results. Yeah, wow. Just take a different street. And if you see that hole, well, by George, walk around it. Okay, let's see. This is called Beautiful Day, Isn't It? By Barbara Johnson, another great woman author that I enjoyed reading. From the day started out rotten. I overslept and was late for work. Everything that happened at the office contributed to my nervous frenzy. By the time I reached the bus stop for my homeward trip, my stomach was one big knot. As usual, the bus was late and jammed. I had to stand in the aisle. As the lurching vehicle pulled me in all directions, my gloom deepened. Then I heard a deep voice from way up front boom, "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Because of the crowd, I could not see the man, but I could hear him as he continued to comment on the spring scenery, calling attention to each approaching landmark. This church, that park, this cemetery, that firehouse. Soon all the passengers were gazing out the windows. The man's enthusiasm was so contagious, I found myself smiling for the first time that day. We reached my stop. Maneuvering toward the door, I got a look at our guide, a plump figure with a black beard, wearing dark glasses and carrying a thin white cane. He was blind. Wow. Neat story. This one is titled "Don't Give Up." And this is adapted from a Focus on the Family radio broadcast retold by Alice Gray. One day, a young man was walking along an isolated road when he heard something like a crying sound. He couldn't tell for sure what the sound was, but it seemed to be coming from underneath a bridge. As he approached the bridge, the sound got louder, and then he saw a pathetic sight. There, lying in the muddy riverbed, was a puppy about 2 months old. It had a gash on its head and was covered in mud. Its front legs were swollen where they had been tightly bound with cords. The young man was immediately moved with compassion and wanted to help this dog. But as he approached, the crying stopped, and the dog snarled his lip and started to growl. But the young man did not give up. He sat down and started gently talking to the dog. It took a long time, but eventually the dog stopped growling, and the man was able to inch forward and eventually touch the dog and began unwrapping the tightly bound cord. The young man carried the dog home, cared for his wounds, and gave it food and water and a warm bed. Even with all this, the dog continued to snarl and growl every time the young man approached. But the young man did not give up. Weeks went by, and the man continued caring for the puppy. Then one day, the young man approached. The dog wagged its tail. Consistent love and kindness had won, and a lifelong friendship of loyalty and trust began. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Headhunter by Josh McDowell. An executive hired a headhunter who goes out and hires corporation executives for other firms. Once told me, "When I get an executive that I'm trying to hire for someone else, I like to disarm him. I offer him a drink, take my coat off, then my vest. I undo my tie, throw my feet up, and talk about baseball, football, family, whatever, until he's all relaxed. Then when I think I've got him relaxed, I lean over, look him square in the eye, and say, 'What's your purpose in life?'" It's amazing how top executives fall apart at that question. Well, I was interviewing this fellow the other day, had him all disarmed with my feet up on his desk talking about football. Then I leaned up and asked, "What's your purpose in life, Bob?" And he said without blinking an eye, "To go to heaven and take as many people with me as I can." For the first time in my career, I was speechless. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a few pages okay, this one is very short. It's called Bullets or Seeds, but the message is powerful. And this is by Richard C. Halverson former chaplain of the United States Senate. You can offer your ideas to others as bullets or seeds. You can shoot them or you can sow them. Hit people in the head with them or plant them in their hearts. Ideas used as bullets will kill inspiration and neutralize motivation. Used as seeds, they take root, grow, and become reality in the life in which they are planted. The only risk in the seed approach, once it grows and becomes part of those in whom it's planted, you probably will get no credit for the originating idea. But if you're willing to do without the credit, you'll reap a rich harvest. The Small Gift by Morris Chalfant, retold by Marilyn K. McCauley. Reverend Chalfant tells of a couple who were celebrating their golden wedding anniversary. The husband was asked what the secret was to his successful marriage. As the elderly are wont to do, the old gentleman answered with a story. His wife Sarah was the only girl he ever dated. He grew up in an orphanage and worked hard for everything he had. He never had time to date until Sarah swept him off his feet. Before he knew it, she had managed to get him to ask her to marry him. After they said their vows on their wedding day, Sarah's father took the new groom aside and handed him a small gift. He said, "Within this gift is all you really need to know how to have a happy marriage." The nervous young man fumbled with the paper and the ribbon until he got the package unwrapped. Within the box lay a large gold watch. With great care he picked it up. Upon close examination, he saw etched across the face of the watch a prudent reminder he would see whenever he checked the time of day. Words that, if heeded, held the secret to a successful marriage. And the words were, "Say something nice to Sarah." Oh, how sweet. That's really cool. Good thing to remember. Okay, let's see. I'm just going to read, I think, one more. And it's called Love's Power by Alan Loy McGinnis. Viktor Frankl, a Viennese Jew, was interned by the Germans for more than 3 years. He was moved from one concentration camp to another, even spending several months at Auschwitz. Dr. Frankl said that he learned early that one way to survive was to shave every morning. No matter how sick you were, even if you had to use a piece of broken glass as a razor. For every morning, as the prisoners stood for review, the sickly ones who would not be able to work that day were sent to the gas chambers. If you were shaven and your face looked ruddier for it, your chances of escaping death that day were better. Their bodies wasted away on the daily fare of 10 ounces of bread and 1 3/4 pints of thin gruel. They slept on bare board tiers 7 feet wide, 9 men to a tier. The 9 men shared 2 blankets together. Oh my goodness. 3 shrill whistles awoke them for work at 3 a.m. One morning, as they marched out to lay railroad ties in the frozen ground miles from the camp, the accompanying guards kept shouting and driving them with the butts of their rifles. Anyone with sore feet supported himself on his neighbor's arm. The man next to Frankl, hiding his mouth behind his upturned collar, whispered, "If our wives could see us now, I do hope they are better off in their camps and don't know what is happening to us." Frankl writes, "That brought thoughts of my own wife to mind, and as we stumbled on for miles, slipping on icy spots, supporting each other time and again, dragging one another up and onward, nothing was said, but we both knew. Each of us was thinking of his wife. Occasionally I would look at the sky where the stars were fading and the pink light of the morning was beginning to spread behind a dark bank of clouds. But my mind clung to my wife's image, imagining it with uncanny acuteness. I heard her answering me, saw her smile, her frank and encouraging look. A thought transfixed me. For the first time in my life, I saw the truth as it is set into song by so many poets, proclaimed as the final wisdom by so many thinkers. The truth that love is the ultimate and highest goal to which man can aspire. Then I grasped the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to impart. The salvation of man is through love and in love. 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, "And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love." Okay, thank you for joining me for Stories for the Heart today. I hope you have a blessed day, and I'll see you again next time.